Right now on Morning News Now, the clock is ticking in Washington this morning as the federal government hurdles toward that looming shutdown, now potentially less than 48 hours away. Lawmakers at a standstill as House Speaker Kevin McCarthy looks to avert disaster today with a short-term deal. But does it have the support needed to keep the lights on? We're covering it all, plus the ripple effect a potential shutdown could have on America's airports. Also this morning, no evidence yet of President Biden committing a crime. That's according to witnesses in the GOP's ongoing impeachment inquiry in the House. We'll take you inside that initial hearing yesterday with more on the investigation, seeking bank records and additional information on the president and his family. Plus, America and the vaccine. We've got some brand new NBC News polling data out just this morning that's shining a light on just how many Americans got a COVID jab and whether they believe it was worth it. Those numbers later in the hour. And trailblazers as we dance through Hispanic Heritage Month later in the hour. I'll bring you my conversation with a band at the forefront of the Latin music explosion, both here in the U.S. and across the globe, Grupo Frontera. Maybe we can do some cumbia dancing later this hour.
I didn't know you got to actually meet them.
Yeah, they were really nice, very down to earth. We had a great conversation.
I hope we get to hear some of that in your story.
Will.
Okay, very nice.
Good morning, I'm Valerie Castro.
And I'm Stephen Romo. Joe and Savannah are on assignment.
We begin this morning in Washington, where little progress has been made to avoid a potential federal government shutdown.
Yeah, and time is running out for Congress to reach a deal on funding the government. That deadline is Saturday at midnight. Millions of Americans would be affected by this shutdown. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy says he plans to bring a short-term funding bill to the House floor today, but its path is very unclear as McCarthy is facing deep opposition within his own party. A bipartisan Senate bill to fund the government through mid-November has not yet been voted on, but that bill is being opposed by many House Republicans, including Speaker McCarthy.
I look at the current Senate bill that does nothing when it deals with the border. Listen, I believe this is an opportunity. It's an opportunity to deal with the border, deal with our funding, and put us on a path that this country is stronger.
The House did take up several bills yesterday, including passing and approving $300 million in new aid to Ukraine. NBC News congressional correspondent Julie Sirkin joins us now with the latest on this. Julie, good morning. So if you will, sort of set the scene for today. What can you tell us about this bill McCarthy is planning to bring to the House floor, and talk to us about the challenges he's facing with his own party? Remember back in January how hard it was for him to get those far-right members on board just for him to win the speakership, and now here we go again.
Yeah, good morning, guys. Well, look, Republicans I spoke to said that this is nothing compared to, the gavel battle that he faced is nothing compared to this challenging fight that he's facing now. The debt ceiling was sort of phase 2, as conservatives explained. This is now phase 3. And today, McCarthy plans to bring up a stopgap measure about 30 days to fund the government past this deadline tomorrow night. The problem is that the spending levels are too low for Democrats in the Senate to accept. And of course, the Senate would have to approve that bill. But it's not low enough for Republicans, for some of the hard right conservatives in his own party to accept that in his chamber. And so McCarthy is unfortunately expected to lose at least a handful of Republicans when he brings his bill up for a vote today. But he made progress yesterday on those appropriations bills. That's what he's going to tell reporters later this morning. Take a listen to what he said yesterday in terms of those frustrations.
Look, I got challenge inside our conference. I've got members who will not vote to have a stopgap measure to continue to fund government. I got members who say they'll never vote for a nominee. Well, if you won't do any of that, it's hard to govern. And so, yes, but I look at it, every challenge I have is an opportunity. We will get this done, and we will be better and stronger for it. But I don't give up if the clock runs out. I'm okay playing in overtime.
The problem is overtime is obviously past that shutdown deadline. Millions of Americans would certainly be impacted by that. McCarthy's got a real challenge he's facing today because really this is his only opportunity to get that bill through before that shutdown deadline.
And Julie, what are we hearing from Democratic leadership on the state of negotiations? Where do they stand as the Senate looks to pass its own bill, also facing opposition?
Well, Senate Democrats are working with Republicans now at least to try and craft some kind of border provisions to add to their Senate bill, because remember, that is one of the biggest hangups for conservatives in the House. They have their own border measures attached to their bill. That's something that'll never pass in the Democrat-controlled Senate. Now at the 11th hour, you have a group of Senate Republicans meeting with some Democrats to try and get that through. But overall, Majority Leader Schumer says they're not going to accept anything the House will send over, and they certainly put the shutdown in their ballpark. Take a listen to what Schumer had to say about this.
Speaker McCarthy is letting a small band of very extreme members override the views of everyone else. It's the tail wagging the dog. That's the crux of the entire shutdown message. And if Speaker McCarthy continues on his path, it will have consequences for years to come.
Even the Senate, though, has not managed to pass their stopgap measure yet. That's something they're going to start today and work on through the weekend.
And Julie, a government shutdown like this is not unprecedented. There have been 5 incidents just in the past 30 years. So just briefly here, what are the immediate effects? We'll see if this happens.
Well, millions of Americans will be impacted by this. Federal agencies have already sent instructions to their employees saying they're probably going to be furloughed. Even if they're essential, they're going to have to show up to work without back pay. And of course, this also means critical programs, you see that on your screen, for Americans will be paused. That includes, of course, federal workers. They're going to be furloughed. Social Security and Medicare, that will continue. But as the shutdown goes on, those funds could be impacted. Food programs, child care programs, real things that Americans depend on every single day are going to be threatened because of this shutdown. Of course, the last time this happened in 2019, that went over a month and millions of Americans were impacted by that. This is something, again, that Americans will be facing at midnight tomorrow night.
And looks very likely. All right, Julie, thanks for that update. All right, more on the legal challenges now of former President Donald Trump and his 2 eldest sons, Don Jr. and Eric. They're expected to be among the witnesses in next week's civil fraud trial in New York. That's according to a court filing that came yesterday. The $250 million lawsuit by New York Attorney General Letitia James alleges that Trump and his company committed repeated acts of fraud by making false and misleading claims about the value of multiple real estate assets. Trump denies any wrongdoing. That trial comes as lawyers for the former president say he will not try to move his Georgia election interference case to a federal court. Now, that's a surprise move, as he previously indicated he would try to move that case. Trump and 18 other defendants are charged with attempting to overturn the 2020 election results in Georgia. They have all pleaded not guilty. Now, this reversal comes after fellow defendant Mark Meadows had his bid to move the case to a federal court denied by a judge.
House Republicans have issued a subpoena for the bank records of President Biden's son, Hunter Biden, and brother, James Biden.
Yeah, this comes after star witnesses in the first impeachment inquiry against President Biden ended up testifying that they did not have proof that he committed impeachable offenses. In fact, the hearing didn't bring any new information on Biden's alleged actions. The committee is investigating whether Biden engaged in impeachable offenses under the U.S. Constitution, specifically whether Biden was involved in or personally profited from his family's foreign business dealings, or whether he improperly influenced policy when he served as vice president. Now, the White House insists President Biden has done nothing wrong. Republicans handpicked 3 witnesses for this hearing, while Democrats selected 1 witness. But the testimony from those star witnesses, their own witnesses, did not support those Republican allegations.
I do not believe that the current evidence would support articles of impeachment. That is something that an inquiry has to establish.
I am not here today to even suggest that there was corruption, fraud, or any wrongdoing. In my opinion, more information needs to be gathered and assessed before I would make such an assessment.
NBC News White House correspondent Monica Alba joins us now. Monica, James Comer kicked off the meeting saying the House Oversight Committee, quote, uncovered a mountain of evidence revealing Joe Biden used his public office for his financial gain. So far, there's no evidence to back that up. So walk us through what happened yesterday.
Yeah, really yesterday there was this expectation that there were going to be some new details, a potential linkage between Hunter Biden's business dealings and his father. Remember, we're talking about the time when Joe Biden was vice president, and none of that really came to any kind of an open area here. This is something Republicans continue to talk about or point at without ever being able to back up with any concrete evidence. And that is something certainly that the White House pointed to. They were releasing a statement every 30 minutes or so reminding Americans that that is the case, while pointing to the fact that Republicans were holding this first impeachment inquiry hearing while we are just hours away from a government shutdown, as you've just been discussing the impacts of. But here's a little bit more from the hearing itself, from James Comer and from Jamie Raskin, the Democrat, who also responded to all of this to try to remind people of what has and hasn't been discovered so far. Listen.
For years, President Biden has lied to the American people about his knowledge of and participation in his family's corrupt business schemes.
All right, so let's get it straight. We're 62 hours away from shutting down the government of the United States of America, and Republicans are launching an impeachment drive based on a long debunked and discredited lie.
And again, this is something that President Biden, when he's asked about it, or others in the White House, have simply said that he is proud of his son, that he loves his son, he supports his son, but he maintains that he never had anything to do with the business dealings of his son. Valerie and Stephen.
Monica, we can't ignore the timing of this inquiry. Of course, we were just talking to Julie Sirkin about the government shutdown that's on the horizon that could affect millions of Americans. Our latest NBC polling shows the majority of voters oppose these impeachment hearings. So what could this all mean for Republicans heading into the 2024 election?
Yeah, they're certainly running a political risk there. And again, this was something that even Republicans behind the scenes told our Hill team yesterday. They were really disappointed with how the hearing went. It was 6+ hours. They were expecting more from it. And so I think you may continue to see some, again, within the own party of the GOP saying that if there isn't going to be more that's presented here, this isn't going to amount to anything. And that they could argue is the whole reason for why they're doing this as a potential political stunt to try to put the focus on this, even if there isn't anything there currently to back it up.
Monica, you said it was a long day of hearings yesterday. So what is next?
So there could be more hearings. That is at least what Republicans have pointed to, that we don't have a firm date for that yet. And the government shutdown could complicate all of that. But what would need to happen if this were to potentially advance is there would need to be some kind of charge that they agreed and that the committee would try to bring, that they would, again, try to link Hunter Biden to Joe Biden on. So far, that hasn't happened. And if that were to happen somehow, then there would have to be a vote, which would require a majority. And again, that support right now just doesn't seem to be there. It could potentially, if something else is discovered. You mentioned those records that are going to be subpoenaed, but right now it's just not very clear. Guys.
Monica, thank you for that reporting. We appreciate it.
To Colorado now, where the trial against two officers accused in Elijah McClain's death is currently underway. During testimony this week, new details were revealed about the night leading up to McClain's death, with the court's focus shifting to the training the officers standing trial received. NBC News correspondent Aaron Gilchrist has the story, and we do want to warn you, some of the video you're about to see may be disturbing.
Please be seated. The court will recall.
We're now a week into graphic testimony in the trial over Elijah McClain's death at the hands of police officers in Aurora, Colorado 4 years ago. Officer Randy Rodema and former officer Jason Rosenblatt, the first to stand trial, each pleading not guilty to 1 count of manslaughter and 1 count of criminally negligent homicide.
Next witness for the prosecution.
Thank you, Your Honor.
This case started with a stop at a convenience store. NBC News obtained video of a 23-year-old McClain buying cans of iced tea on August 24th, 2019, and leaving the store before a call to 911.
Let me see if he has a mask on. He looks sketchy. He might be a good person or a bad person.
Yeah.
So, mask on.
Okay. Were any weapons involved or mentioned?
No.
Court documents saying that McClain was often cold and wore a runner's mask and jacket even on warmer days. As McClain walked home carrying a plastic bag in one hand, a cell phone in the other, and earphones in his ears, then Officer Nathan Woodyard tried to stop him.
Do me a favor, stop right there. Hey, stop right there. Stop. 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 I have a right to stop you because you're being suspicious.
Well, okay.
Turn around. Turn around.
Rosenblatt and Rodema arrived on the scene minutes later, and the situation escalated as the officers tried to move McClain, eventually wrestling him to the ground.
Give us some more units. We're fighting them.
Woodyard put McClain in a neck hold, which was eventually released.
Bring us on the ground. It was Elijah McClain. We had to use carotid. So what I was doing, I was just going home. Elijah, I've been a trooper and I'm different.
An officer described McClain as having, quote,
crazy strength.
A paramedic gave McClain ketamine to sedate him before loading him into an ambulance. McClain's heart stopped en route to the hospital. He went into a coma and died 3 days later. Now, after 4 years, 2 of the 3 officers who responded that night are on trial, their attorneys saying they followed procedure and demonstrated restraint.
From the contact to the force to put him in the recovery position was all pursuant to their training and all pursuant to the policy.
The prosecution relaying more grim details of McClain's death.
When the autopsy is performed, his lungs are twice the weight of a normal person's. And you'll hear that in his lungs, there's digestive material and digestive fluid because he's been inhaling his own vomit.
The defense largely blaming McClain's death on the paramedics who administered the ketamine.
But then when paramedics arrive on scene, the paramedics have full medical control.
The 2 paramedics have pled not guilty to manslaughter and negligent homicide. They're scheduled for trial in November. A critical care expert suggesting the ketamine was just one factor.
Was the ketamine, in your opinion, the only thing that caused Mr. McClain's death on the night that he died?
In my opinion, it was not. It was also the position that he was put in that reduced his ability to cough.
One thing both sides agree on, McClain's death should never have happened. Now his family and friends waiting to see who a jury believes is responsible.
Aaron Gilchrist reporting there. It's not clear right now whether the officers will actually take the stand to testify.
This morning, we're learning chilling new details about the moments leading up to the murder of tech CEO Pava Lapere in Baltimore. It comes a day after police confirmed a suspect was arrested following an extensive manhunt. NBC News correspondent Ron Allen has the latest.
Baltimore prosecutors vowing to send Jason Billingsley to prison for the rest of his life after charging him with murdering tech CEO Pava Lapere.
The last few days have been unnerving for our citizens, and I sincerely hope we are able to find a little bit of peace today.
In a statement, Lapere's family saying they're relieved to know he can no longer hurt other innocent victims.
She really was larger than life.
The arrest hours after a vigil attended by hundreds.
She was the definition of daddy's little girl. She had me wrapped and still does.
Charging documents say Lapere let the suspect into the building where she lived and worked last Friday night around 11 p.m. And that security footage shows them getting into an elevator together. The documents say Lapere's half-clothed body was found on the roof. The cause of death, strangulation and blunt force trauma. Police also revealed they already were tracking Billingsley as a suspect in a case involving attempted murder, rape, and arson, but had not alerted the public when he allegedly killed Lapere 3 days later, leading to questions about whether authorities should have raised alarms about Billingsley before he allegedly killed Lapere, a widely admired tech entrepreneur.
I'm not going to speculate whether it could have prevented her death, but as soon as we realized that there was a public safety, we had the press conference.
Questions also swirling about how a man who authorities say is a repeat violent criminal and sex offender could be released from prison on parole and probation last October after serving about half of a 14-year sentence.
Rapists shouldn't be let out early, period.
Our thanks to Ron Allen for that report. This morning, police say they still see no previous connection between Lapere and Billingsley. Time now for your weekend forecast.
And looks like it's going to be another rainy one, but we're not going to blame meteorologist Angie Lassman. That's not a funny joke anymore. Angie, what can you tell us? Good
morning. You got to be nicer to me in order for me to give you better news.
I've learned that, yes.
All jokes aside, guys, yes, it is a very busy day, specifically today, and we will see that rain carry over into the weekend, but today is going to be a high-impact day across parts of the Northeast. We're already seeing 23 million people under flood alerts. Specifically, we have flash flood warnings already in effect this morning for parts of Brooklyn. We're seeing parts of Long Island involved in this, and we're likely to see more of those come down the pipeline here as we go through the day today. You can see the radar picking up all of that heavy rain that we've been in and out of already since early this morning. The commute this morning is going to be a mess. Later this afternoon, potentially an even bigger mess with more rain and really impressive rainfall amounts and rates on tap for the day today. So let's show you exactly what's happening. We've got a coastal low sitting down a little to our south, just off the coast of the mid-Atlantic. It's pushing in all of this moisture, and we've got a really impressive moisture to tap into, and we likely will see repeated rounds of that heavy rainfall over some of the same areas. And remember, we've got those really saturated grounds from all of the rain earlier into this week, and it just has nowhere to go. So this is going to be something we'll watch. If you're looking for the drier skies, that happens as we get later into the day on Saturday and into Sunday. It'll be a gorgeous day, but between now through Saturday, here are those rainfall totals. You can see widespread amounts, 1 to 3 inches, but we could see 6 to 8 inches in some of the worst case scenarios. It looks like we could pick up 10 inches in some spots. That means that flash flooding is a big concern today, and it could be life-threatening for some folks. So this is something you'll want to watch, especially if you're in parts of New York. New York City is included in the skies. Parts of Connecticut, New Jersey, all have the potential to see a really difficult day ahead.
Wow, saw all those headlines popping off yesterday about the potential danger here.
Do not drive through the flooded roadways.
Yes, say it and say it again. All right, Andrew Lassman, thanks so much.
Thank you. Former President Jimmy Carter is getting ready to celebrate a major milestone birthday this weekend. The longest-living former president is turning 99 this Sunday, and the Carter Center in Georgia is celebrating with several activities, including a display of birthday messages from people all around the world. And while the former president's birthday is actually on Sunday, most of the events are being held tomorrow ahead of the expected government shutdown.
Well, much more coming up on this hour of Morning News Now. We are on shutdown watch this morning out of Washington. And with less than 48 hours to go before that Saturday night deadline, how could America's airports be affected? We're digging deeper after this break.
Plus, new COVID numbers out just this morning from NBC News. Do Americans feel like getting the vaccine was worth it? That's later in the hour. We'll be right back. Turning back now to the potential government shutdown. The last time this happened in 2018, air travel nearly ground to a halt. The stakes could be even higher this time if the stalemate goes on for a prolonged period of time, with TSA officers and air traffic controllers required to work without being paid. NBC's Tom Costello has the latest from Reagan National Airport. Tom, good morning to you.
Good morning. Take a look at this TSA line here at Reagan National Airport. It's a long line, right? It's going to get even longer potentially if we have a shutdown. Remember what happened 4 years ago? That's when, in fact, TSA officers going without a paycheck, they simply started calling out sick en masse, and the lines got long. And have you noticed air traffic control problems? We've been talking about it all year. We've had a lot of close calls in the nation's skies. There aren't enough controllers. They're already working 10-hour days, 6-day weeks. Imagine now that they're supposed to go without a paycheck. But guess who will get paid, you guys? Congress.
With a government shutdown all but inevitable, the ripple effect at the nation's airports could soon be on the horizon.
The consequences would be disruptive and dangerous.
From TSA checkpoints to airport control towers, frontline workers who keep the flying public safe could be forced to work without pay, even as members of Congress continue to take home a paycheck.
That's 100% wrong. If they're not going to pay the necessary employees to do work, they shouldn't get paid either.
We just wonder what's going to happen and where your money's going to come from.
The FAA is already short at least 2,500 controllers, forcing many to work 10-hour days and 6-day weeks as new controllers go through training. A shutdown would immediately hamper efforts to bring those controllers on board.
We would immediately have to stop training new air traffic controllers and furlough another 1,000 controllers who are already in the training pipeline.
All of it adding new financial stress to an already high-pressure, stressful job.
A day or two is frustrating and difficult. A pay period or two, it's untenable.
Is it infuriating, Rich?
It's frustrating. This industry relies on us.
For now, passengers likely won't see changes at the airport, but that could change if the situation drags on. Experts warn we could see a repeat of the 2019 partial government shutdown.
I wouldn't be surprised if it takes, another 20 to 30 minutes before we become airborne.
When air traffic slowed significantly after controllers missed 2 paychecks and many called out sick. After going without pay, some TSA screening officers went looking for other jobs, leading to longer security lines. The tipping point in 2019 came when New York's LaGuardia Airport ground to a virtual standstill, forcing President Trump to end the shutdown. Now, nearly 5 years later, frontline aviation workers and passengers are watching. History could be about to repeat itself.
Okay, remember what happened earlier this year when essentially the FAA had to ground all air traffic because its computer system went down? They've been upgrading, working on that computer system all year. Guess what stops if, in fact, there's a government shutdown? You can see the ripple effect could really be very prolonged and quite severe. Back to you guys.
Yeah, and the holidays are not that far off. A lot of people will be traveling then. Tom, thank you so much.
To international news now. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken met with India's top diplomat as tension grows over the death of a Sikh Canadian citizen.
NBC News foreign correspondent Claudio Lavanga joins us now with more from Rome. Good morning to you, Claudio.
Good morning, guys. That's right. The U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken in Washington yesterday met the Indian External Affairs Minister to discuss a full range of issues, but at least according to an official readout, they did not talk about the killing of that Canadian Sikh that was killed in British Columbia. Now, Blinken had previously stated that India should cooperate with Canada's investigation, which alleges that the Indian government was involved in the killing. The two discussed the upcoming diplomatic summit between the U.S. and India on foreign relations. Now to Sweden, where Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson is summoning the head of armed forces to help aid in a recent rise of gang violence. They, along with the police chief, will meet today to discuss a further military intervention. The meeting comes just one day after two men were shot in Stockholm and a blast that killed a woman in another town further north. This month alone, Sweden has seen 12 gang violence-related killings. And finally, even if it's 7 o'clock in the morning, maybe too early in the day, it's time to raise your glass and get your wallets ready. Taiwanese billionaire Pierre Chen is auctioning off 25,000 bottles of wine from his personal collection. The sale is expected to go for a total of $50 million, with some single bottles valued at $190,000 alone. But the auction is only a fraction of Chen's wine cellar, with his full collection reaching an estimated 6 figures. That's enough to give me a hangover just to think about it, guys.
You can get a hangover with the $5 stuff, though, Claudio. Got to remember that.
Claudio, thank you so much.
Yes, well, a bad hangover.
Yeah. He's not wrong. Well, staying overseas now, the years-long war in Nagorno-Karabakh is coming to an end, with the disputed region now falling under control of Azerbaijan. The announcement comes after tens of thousands of ethnic Armenians fled their homes after days of brutal attacks. NBC News foreign correspondent Matt Bradley has those details.
After years of unrest and upheaval, the war between Nagorno-Karabakh and Azerbaijan is finally over. The devastated region will dissolve and cease to exist by the new year, now under Azerbaijani control. The announcement coming after more than 70,000 ethnic Armenians have fled their homeland in recent days, more than half the population, and more appear to be en route. I have a wife, 3 children, a son-in-law, and 3 grandchildren, this man said. I don't know where they are now. We left everything behind. Azerbaijan has said there's no reason for Armenians to flee, claiming there's a future for them in the region. But many Armenians share stories of persecution, ethnic cleansing, and days of fierce Azerbaijani attacks. This woman described violent fighting, saying, "We weren't able to go outside or make something to eat. We were staying in the basements. How can I live with them? My sister's child was killed. Many of my relatives were killed." And just hours after the war ended, the Azerbaijanis arrested the former head of Nagorno-Karabakh's administration as he tried to cross into Armenia. For many, it's one of the most dangerous parts of the journey. Azerbaijani checkpoints all along the road to Armenia. Azerbaijan says they're looking for terrorists. Armenians fear they're looking for retribution.
A lot of people are just terrified when they arrive at those checkpoints, especially men, because they have to get out of the cars and go like a separate way, and they're more checked than, for example, women and children.
Nagorno-Karabakh's dissolution even sparked violence miles away in Lebanon as Lebanese Armenians protested the region coming under Azerbaijani control. While many have accepted that Nagorno-Karabakh has finished as an independent Armenian nation, some are increasingly fearful the region will no longer have any Armenians at all.
Some people were saying if this continues like this, by the end of the week, there just will be no more Armenians left there.
As this years-long war finally comes to an end, Armenians' long and dangerous journey is only just beginning. Matt Bradley, NBC News.
Coming up, new NBC News polling data out just this morning spotlighting the COVID vaccine, and did those Americans think it was worth it?
And just how many Americans got at least one COVID jab? We're breaking down those new numbers coming up next.
Welcome back. 1 year ago, Hurricane Ian struck southwest Florida, killing at least 148 people and leaving a trail of destruction in its wake. This morning, many of the people who live in the area are still trying to put their lives back together. NBC News correspondent Sam Brock has their stories.
1 year ago, Florida residents came face to face with the horror of Hurricane Ian. The sheer power of the monster Category 4 storm on full display. 155-mile-an-hour winds battering the coastline. Storm surge swallowing neighborhoods whole. The death and destruction left in Ian's wake difficult to fathom. The hurricane claimed at least 148 lives, and for those left behind, entire communities wiped off the map. We were on the ground as rescue crews surveyed the damage, searching for survivors, and residents just starting to come to terms with all that they had lost.
It was just an old trailer, but you don't realize how nice it was till it's gone.
Robert Harmon watched his home get destroyed and slept in his car for days after Ian made landfall. Others vowing to flee the state altogether.
Has this experience changed your desire to stay in Cape Coral?
Yes.
You're reconsidering it.
We're leaving. Oh, yeah.
But now, a year later, some of Ian's most vulnerable victims who decided to stay, still desperate for help.
That's what I need to save my nights and almost my days while out to work.
Maricel Jacobo now lives here in a shed in the backyard of her house. That house devastated by flooding from Hurricane Ian. The storm hitting as she was recovering from major surgery, leaving her trapped in the rising waters along with her dog.
I'll be staying in the water for almost 5 hours till the rescue come to pick it out the people.
Maricel says she lost everything. Her home now stripped down to the studs. She says her insurance won't pay for the repairs to her home's roof. So for now, the shed is the only shelter she can afford.
It's really scary. It's no kind of life like that. This was no life.
Earlier this year, insurance companies, big and small, pulled out of Florida, affecting thousands of policies. Dr. Shahid Hamid with the International Hurricane Research Center at FIU says it's due to several factors.
We have increase in exposure, a lot of houses being built, and the exposure is increasing, has increased rapidly. We have also reinsurance rates that are going up dramatically in the last year or two, and that's a worldwide phenomenon.
That was a little bit more sticker shock for me getting that letter.
Ed Kaiser and thousands of others now struggling to find coverage since other insurers won't take their case with pre-existing damage to their homes.
They said if you have an outstanding claim, nobody will touch you.
Amid the lingering devastation, still timely signs of hope. A clock in the Fort Myers Beach Times Square, swept away in the storm, now back, a symbol of a community knocked down by a historic hurricane, but never defeated.
All right, thanks to Sam Brock for that report. Dr. Hamid says that fraud is one of the drivers of insurance flight in Florida, with the state accounting for 9% of property claims nationally, but 79% of lawsuits.
As COVID cases once again rise across the country, many Americans are trying to decide if they're going to go ahead and get that latest booster.
Well, a new NBC News poll shows that much of that decision is political and based more on personal experience than science.
NBC News senior political editor Mark Murray joins us now with the details on these numbers. Good morning, Mark. So let's get into it. What do these numbers tell us about how many Americans got the shots and how happy they are with that choice?
Yeah, our poll finds that 76% of all registered voters say they've received at least one of the COVID vaccines. And by political party, overwhelming majorities of Democrats, some 94%, 75% of independents, and even a majority of Republicans, 60%, all end up saying that they've received at least one COVID vaccine.
So, Mark, not surprisingly, it was divided along party lines. And while 90% of Democrats are glad they got the shot, the number is much lower among Republicans. And there's even some differences based on which candidate the person supports. What can you tell us?
Yeah, our poll ends up finding a majority of Republican respondents ended up saying that getting one of those COVID vaccines was not worth it. And that was among people who have received at least one COVID vaccine. And by political party, our poll ends up showing, 9 in 10 Democrats saying it was worth it, 2/3 of Republicans, but just 36% of Republicans. And you're exactly right. So much has seemed to be driven by political partisan politics here when it comes to taking one of these COVID vaccines.
And Mark, in this polling, did people explain at all why they feel that way about getting the COVID vaccine or not getting the COVID vaccine?
Yeah, our poll ended up asking questions, just asking people just why in a sentence or two. And many people explained that it was their personal experiences on why they ended up regretting it. But it is important to note the political context behind this. Over the last 2 years, you've had Republicans, including some of the Republicans who are running for president, like Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, cast doubt about COVID vaccines. It's played out on the campaign trail. And just this political divide should not be surprising when we look at the rhetoric, particularly coming from the Republican side when it comes to vaccines and COVID-19.
Certainly a very important context there. All right, Mark Murray, thanks so much.
Millions of Americans may soon be at risk of losing child care if Congress does not act fast. The pandemic-era emergency relief funding that helped thousands of daycare centers is set to expire tomorrow, September 30th. And if funding expires, as NBC News correspondent Blaine Alexander reports, many of those child care centers could be at risk of closing, causing millions of children to lose their spots.
It's hard to find a dull moment in the Baxter household. With 2 full-time working parents and 2 small children, the secret sauce in keeping it all together? The Clay County Early Education Center here in Hayesville, North Carolina. That's where 3-year-old Jura spends her days.
How crucial is that child care to just having your family run smoothly?
We depend on it 100%. I truly don't know what we would do if we did not have that.
But that center is now in jeopardy of closing for good. It's among the more than 220,000 child care providers across the country that received $24 billion in federal pandemic relief, money that for the last 2 years has helped keep the doors open. But with that funding set to end September 30th, it could have a resounding impact. One report estimates more than 70,000 child care providers that have received that money could face possible closure. Sheila Hoyle is director of the Southwestern Child Development Commission, which operates the Hayesville Center.
We need child care. We need it not only for the economic value of supporting the workforce, but we need it so that we send our youngest children to public school ready to learn.
In North Carolina, the new state budget allows for leftover funds to extend those compensation grants for several months. And while the September deadline will not mean instant closures for most centers around the country, for providers like Sheila, retaining staff becomes an immediate concern.
Every fast food restaurant has a sign out and how much they're paying per hour. And in many cases, I can't even equal that wage.
The threat of losing the center is especially devastating in this rural community. Jill and Miguel say one of them might have to leave their job.
Within a 25-mile radius, there's absolutely no option.
If you've been in this business, you've hit several bumps in the road. This is the largest bump that I've ever hit.
Now, hoping for some help to make it to the other side. Blaine Alexander, NBC News, Hayesville, North Carolina.
Well, still to come this morning, it's no secret that many pesky subscription fees for your favorite streamers or even retailers are creeping up.
And that $1 here or $1 there can really add up over time. So after the break, we've got some tips on how you can cut costs. Stick around. Welcome back. The cost of some monthly subscription services are creeping up, and these small hikes can seem harmless at first, but when you put them all together, it can really add up. Here's NBC News technology correspondent Jake Ward with some ways to cut costs.
It's only $1. That's how much more a subscription to Amazon Prime's music will now cost, the company says. $1 here, $1 there. American consumers now paying an estimated $219 a month for streaming subscriptions.
Don't you dare increase something that's not worth it. I'm not about to pay $20 to reminisce.
I have already cut down 3 subscriptions so far. That alone is going to save me over $600 a year.
Oh man, between streaming, software, and some random Spanish instruction I forgot about, I'm paying well over $200 a year.
A pioneer of subscription says that's the point.
Often forgetfulness is part of the business model. A lot of organizations do that. They even go so far as to hide the cancel button, to make it hard to get out of the relationship.
And the result is an estimated $5 billion a year for businesses, a number likely to keep growing. Elon Musk says even X, formerly Twitter, may start charging a few dollars to weed out bots.
We're moving to having a small monthly payment for use of the X system.
How do you get out of this loop? Several companies will find and cancel unwanted subscriptions for free, although premium services charge a subscription. Make sure you're not paying for overlapping services. Your cable subscription, for instance, may include streaming apps that you are paying for separately. If you love an app but not the price, switch your subscription to one with ads.
Cancel the ones you no longer use or that you use very little. You're throwing away money otherwise.
Jake Ward, NBC News, San Francisco.
Good advice. To some financial headlines now. Tesla is now facing a lawsuit from the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission.
CNBC's Silvana Henao joins us now with that and more and other money news. Good morning, Silvana.
Good morning, Valerie. Good morning, Stephen. Yes, so listen to this. Tesla is being sued by the Equal Opportunity Employment Commission, alleging the electric vehicle maker tolerated widespread racial discrimination against Black employees at its factory in California. The agency also claims Tesla retaliated against those who opposed the harassment. The lawsuit is seeking damages and back pay for the affected employees, as well as changes to Tesla's employment practices. In 2021, a Black Tesla employee was awarded $137 million by a jury who agreed he was harassed at the California plant. That award was later reduced on appeal. GameStop has a new man in charge, and he's putting his employees on notice. Ryan Cohen was named CEO of the struggling video game retailer yesterday. He is the company's largest shareholder and the founder of online pet supply chain Chewy. In a memo to staff obtained by CNBC, Cohen says their job is to ensure GameStop survives. He says extreme frugality is required and every expense will be scrutinized. And it's National Coffee Day, and there are deals everywhere. Dunkin' Rewards members can get a free medium iced or hot coffee with any purchase. Krispy Kreme is giving customers a free medium hot or iced coffee or espresso-based drink with no purchase necessary. Starbucks is releasing 6 new reserve coffee microblends inspired by the cities where it has a roastery: Seattle, Chicago, New York, Milan, Tokyo, and Shanghai. About 2/3 of Americans drink coffee every day, or that's about 1.7 cups for everyone in the country. Happy Coffee Day.
I love that math. Yeah. Sign me up. I'll take it. I don't care if it's special microblend or what have you. I need that caffeine.
Hey, free coffee.
I need espresso in mine. Espresso for me.
That's advanced. All right. Thanks, Silvana.
Silvana, thank you.
Yes.
Well, coming up, a Latino band taking the U.S. and the world by storm by sticking to their roots.
After the break, as Hispanic Heritage Month rolls on, we'll bring you my conversation with Texas group Grupo Frontera on their meteoric rise to music stardom, though they never truly left home behind.
All right, this Good Talker starts off a little sad, but trust me, it gets a lot better. A rescued alligator missing half her upper jaw has been given a great new name. The reptile was malnourished and underweight when she was saved by wildlife officials in Sanford, Florida, and they called her Lil Guy. But after she was transferred to Gatorland in Orlando, workers found she was actually a little girl. So they asked the public to come up with a new name. And the winner was the Dolly Parton-inspired Jolene. USA Today reports that Jolene is now putting on weight and has her own private pool. I'm going to want to sing those lyrics whenever I hear Jolene from now on.
Absolutely. I hope she's getting pampered. She looks like she could use it with her own swimming pool. Good for her. Latin artists are topping the music charts here in the U.S. and around the world, and they're doing it with songs in Spanish while also using sounds and rhythms from Latin American culture. The band Grupo Frontera is at the forefront. I got a chance to sit down with them to talk about their newfound success, collaborations with other mega stars, and how they're sticking to their roots. Meet the band bringing regional Mexican music to a global stage. Grupo Frontera. Leaning into the country style of northern Mexico, specifically with cumbias norteñas, the rhythms made with acoustic instruments and accordions, a twist on a nostalgic sound.
We're modernizing the same music that our parents and grandparents listened to, so the new generation can listen to it.
The group exploding just last year with a cover of No Se Va. Then hit after hit, sending them on a meteoric rise and leading to collaborations with other Latin stars like Peso Pluma and Bad Bunny. Did you manifest these collaborations?
One of them, in a way, yes.
One manifested the Bad Bunny collab.
That manifestation translating into a hit song. 1% rising to #1 on the global Spotify chart. Bad Bunny is one genre of music. You guys are another. Why do you think it works so well together?
Because nobody expected it.
Yeah, nobody
expected it. Yeah. And the lyrics. Our new lyrics, starting from like that point, moving forward, for the most part, it's urban. It's urban lyrics that we put into cumbia style.
The Texas natives who formed the group in 2019, playing at weddings and quinceañeras, now one of the top 100 artists on Spotify with over 35 million monthly listeners.
I mean, it's still unbelievable.
Surreal.
Yeah, it's surreal. Because, I mean, I personally don't say it, but people do tell us, you guys are one of like the foremost artists pushing that type of music into the worldwide, right? And we're like, bro, we're just some kids from Texas.
The kids from Texas made their way to Mexico City this month, celebrating Mexican Independence Day, returning to their roots in the famed city plaza, El Zócalo, to a crowd of 200,000 fans.
That was something so, out of this world. Crowds and crowds singing our songs.
The group is part of the rising Latin revolution in music. Past Latin artists found worldwide crossover success once they began singing in English. I'm on tonight, my hips don't lie. But with talent like Karol G, Bad Bunny, and Peso Pluma headlining festivals and topping the charts, the newest generation finding their fans in Spanish. And when you hear that people that don't even speak Spanish are fans of your music, why do you think that is, and how do you feel about that?
The rhythms.
Yeah, the beat, the style of music. I mean, you can listen to a sad song and know that it's sad without having to know what they're saying, you know?
The fusion bringing people to dance floors shared through TikTok and YouTube. Grupo Frontera's Latino pride gracing stages everywhere.
We love the raza. We love everything that has to do with our culture. And we're grateful to be Mexicans. And we love what we're doing. We love that we're spreading Hispanic heritage around the world.
No matter the language.
Music is very universal. You don't have to understand it, you have to feel it. And a lot more people are feeling it now, and now that it has that reach, a lot more people are enjoying it.
They were so much fun to talk to. As for what's next, the guys say they are working on an album for early next year. I asked them what their next dream collaboration would be. They say Bruno Mars would be on their wish list.
Very nice. Great story, Valerie. And finally, this hour, Viva Las Vegas. The Vegas Strip has received a shiny new addition simply called Sphere. Now, many onlookers have been mesmerized by its appearance from the outside. NBC News Now anchor Gotti Schwartz is giving us a sneak peek at what it looks like on the inside ahead of its grand opening.
Right off the Vegas Strip is the future of entertainment in a way only science fiction could predict. Some calling it eye-catching. To others, it's out of this world. And when words fail, there's always an emoji. But this 366-foot shimmering exosphere is just the beginning, because what's inside there is even more mind-blowing.
What is your name?
My name's Gotti.
And I'm Jim.
Gotti
We've met
Jim.
before.
Welcome to Sphere.
Just beyond 5 Aura robots is a taste of the most baffling sound system in the world. You're isolating each instrument.
I'm isolating each instrument into a beam.
All of this starting with a simple sketch from Jim Dole, owner of some of the most storied venues on Earth, who decided to reimagine entertainment with a $2.3 billion gamble in the desert.
What was your reaction when you saw it turn on?
Well, I was enchanted too. I mean, it was awesome. We designed it, we visualized it, and it's so big.
And finally, inside the sphere within a sphere, 168,000 square feet of high-definition LEDs, 167,000 speakers, 17,000 seats, and 10,000 of them powered by haptics.
It's impossible to describe, right? It's like trying to explain what a peanut butter and jelly sandwich tastes like to somebody who's never tasted one.
This weekend, U2 claiming the first residency, followed closely by another fully immersive experience called Postcards from Earth. All about this even bigger sphere that we all call home. Gotti Schwartz, NBC News, Las Vegas.
Wow, well, that does it for this hour of Morning News Now.
But your news continues right now.
Good morning to you. I'm Valerie Castro.
And I'm Stephen Romo. Joe and Savannah are off this morning. Developing right now on Morning News Now, down to the wire. This morning, an all but certain government shutdown just hours away. Congress still struggling to figure out a last-minute spending deal before the end of the month deadline.
Congress has only one option to avoid a shutdown: bipartisanship.
But with no agreement in sight, lawmakers and everyday Americans like you and me are bracing for the worst. We'll have team coverage with the latest on talks and how a shutdown could affect you. Also this morning, gridlocked, another bump in the road for auto workers in Detroit's Big Three. The union now calling more employees to join the picket line. But there could be a light at the end of this tunnel. What we're learning about a late-night counteroffer that could end the 2-week-long strike. Plus, prescription problems involving diabetes drugs now commonly used for weight loss. The new report that shows a 300% spike in the use of meds like Ozempic and Wegovy, just as the FDA issues a new warning about their side effects. And it's the end of an era for Netflix. Today, the streaming giant plans to mail out its final red and white envelopes after 25 years. We'll press rewind for a look back at the once iconic DVD service that made Netflix a household name. But don't worry, there is still so much for you to watch this weekend. From a top horror franchise to a kid favorite, we'll run you through what's new in our can't miss list.
Especially a rainy weekend here in New York. A lot to watch.
Time.
Well, we begin this hour on Capitol Hill in the fight to keep the government from shutting down for the first time in nearly 5 years.
Yeah, today, House Speaker Kevin McCarthy is looking to bring a long-shot, short-term funding bill to the House floor. That proposed package, though, calls for steep spending cuts and a border and immigration measure that is not at all likely to pass in the Democrat-led Senate.
I believe we need a stopgap measure to keep government open, and that's what we'll propose on Friday, to be able to keep the government open and while at the same time helping us secure the border.
And problems for McCarthy coming from inside his own party. Some fellow Republicans in Congress are threatening to overthrow and oust McCarthy from the speakership altogether if he were to put the Senate's bill making its way through the upper chamber onto the House floor. We have team coverage this morning, including NBC's Tom Costello, on the potential effects a government shutdown would have on air travel. But we begin with NBC News congressional correspondent Julie Sirkin for more on this. Julie, good morning. So what can we expect on the House floor today? And talk to us about this ongoing division we're seeing among Republicans.
Well, the House is going to consider or begin considering this stopgap government funding measure. It'll go about 30 days. The spending levels, though, too low for Senate Democrats to accept. So really, even if it manages to muscle through the House, which at this point, we know at least a handful of conservatives are vowing to vote against it, even if magic happens and it gets through, it comes over to the Senate where it's likely to fail. And that's why Democrats, at least in the upper chamber, even Minority Leader McConnell, think McCarthy's going to have to take a bipartisan solution here. The problem is if he does that, he faces a motion to vacate by conservatives who want to threaten him with the speakership gavel. Take a listen to what Matt Gaetz, one of those conservatives who's been leading this charge against McCarthy, had to say about this. Watch.
The one thing I agree with my Democrat colleagues on is that for the last 8 months, this House has been poorly led, and we own that, and we have to do something about it. And you know what? My Democrat colleagues will have an opportunity to do something about that too, and we will see if they bail out our failed speaker.
Now, Democrats, even leadership in the Democratic Party, have been trying to be hands off from this. They've been really wanting conservatives to deal with this. They haven't said if they're going to save McCarthy if such a vote would arise on the floor. But we also heard yesterday from a group of conservatives in the House Freedom Caucus who called out McCarthy for his inability to lead on the government funding bill. They said he needs to lead from the front and not behind. So McCarthy facing a slew of problems, guys.
And Julie, McCarthy told reporters last night he spoke with President Biden about establishing a commission to study and find ways to reduce the national debt. What more can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so McCarthy wants to add this commission to this stopgap government funding measure. It's essentially a big priority for him and conservatives. He said some Democrats also agree with it. But remember, none of this is going to keep the government open. And that's really the big issue here, of course, because the government runs out of funding tomorrow night. McCarthy is pushing this debt commission, so to speak, because of conservatives who want him to lower spending. Remember the stopgap measure they're taking up today. It's at about 1.47. That's much lower levels than how the government's been running last year. And this is because conservatives say that under the leadership of Democrats, Schumer, Pelosi, President Biden in the White House as well, they've been overspending. But of course, Democratic priorities, a lot of what the president has accomplished, that's not something they're going to be willing to cut back on, even in a temporary basis. And that is why Democrats have said that this measure from the House is not going to go anywhere.
And Julie, if you would just boil it down for us, what are the main sticking points right now as we approach this midnight deadline, specifically for these House Republicans, and what can we actually expect to see tomorrow?
Well, it depends who you ask, because certainly you have a group of House Republicans, and that's someone that McCarthy has referred to many times when he's speaking to his frustration, who just won't vote for any government funding bill, even on a short-term basis, no matter what it is. Then you have another group, fiscal conservatives, so to speak, who want to lower government spending, even lower than what McCarthy, remember, negotiated with President Biden during that debt default crisis at the end of May. You also have Republicans who want to put pressure on the Biden administration when it comes to the border. They want their own Secure the Border Act, which funds the border wall, the one started by former President Trump, as part of any stopgap measure that would keep the government open. Of course, that kind of thing is a non-starter for Democrats in the Senate. So now you have this effort from Senate Republicans at the 11th hour trying to get some kind of border security provisions into a bill to make it more palatable for House Republicans. I talked to some House Republicans, though, about that. It's not clear if anything the Senate sends over, even with Republican fingerprints, will fly in the House. This is certainly a standstill moment right now. We're at an impasse between Republicans and Democrats, where even at the 11th hour, they're trying to add some measures in to make this pass. But ultimately, any kind of movement that happened last night in the House with appropriations bills, today potentially in the Senate with the stopgap government funding measure, or even in the House, is not going to keep the government open, because everybody needs to coalesce around one product at the end of the day.
All right, Julie, thank you so much.
All right, let's get now deep into those effects a potential shutdown could have on air travel. NBC News correspondent Tom Costello joins us now from Reagan National Airport with more. Tom, if you could walk us through this, what is the fallout we'll see for air travel?
Well, the news is we have a template for all of this, because we did this in 2019, right? 4 years ago, when we had a government shutdown. The people who make sure that your flight is safe, the TSA screening officers to keep explosives off, the air traffic controllers, they had to continue working without a paycheck. And these guys are, for the most part, living paycheck to paycheck. Let's talk about what happened with air traffic controllers and what is going to happen right now. They've already got a shortage of 2,500 controllers. You know, we've talked about a lot of close calls on the nation's skies this year. There aren't enough controllers, and they're trying to staff up and train more controllers. What happens if there's a shutdown? That training academy shuts down. The funnel, the incoming new controllers will be cut at that moment. Take a listen to what the Secretary of Transportation says is on the agenda right here.
We would immediately have to stop training new air traffic controllers and furlough another 1,000 controllers who are already in the training pipeline. The consequences would be disruptive and dangerous.
Okay, now, remember what happened in 2019, because we've done this before, haven't we? In 2019, TSA officers, they started walking off the job after their second missed paycheck. They had to go make the bills, and so they were taking a job at a restaurant. Air traffic controllers, they were incredibly stressed out, and they also started calling in sick en masse. And with that, air travel nearly ground to a halt. But here's the thing, you guys, because of the shortage of air traffic controllers, they are now working 6-day weeks, 10-hour shifts. So now imagine doing that and not getting paid. And guess who will get paid? Congress, guys.
And Tom, what are those air traffic controllers saying to you about all of this? What are you hearing?
They're frustrated. The union is frustrated about the fact that, again, they're put in this position. They are expected to show up to work because they are a critical linchpin in the safety of the nation's airports and air system. And yet, Congress apparently thinks it's okay to let them go without pay for a period of time. And they got to struggle to make the bills, to meet the bills, to be able to afford groceries. You know, most of them don't have huge bank accounts that they can draw on, right? Like most Americans, folks are living paycheck to paycheck. You go 1-2 paychecks without getting paid, and how are you going to pay for the groceries? How do you pay for the kids' soccer? How do you pay for whatever the case may be, medical expenses, etc.? And meanwhile, again, I reiterate, Congress will get paid.
All right, Tom Costello breaking it down for us. Thank you so much.
It's been 2 weeks since the United Auto Workers strike began, and this morning it's expected to get even bigger.
Yeah, a source with the UAW says the union is promising a third round of walkouts against the big three car companies unless there's some last-minute progress. NBC News correspondent Maggie Bespa joins us now from the picket lines in Centerline, Michigan. So, Maggie, what do we know about this potential new round of strikes?
Hey, guys, so it's interesting listening to Tom's report. He said we have a template for what's about to happen in that realm. We also have a template for what's happening here. Remember, this same thing happened last week where the union announced kind of the next round of walkouts. That is what we expect again, quite possibly later on this morning. UAW President Shawn Fain, according to a source with the union, is expected to take to Facebook Live at 10 a.m. Eastern to announce a new round of walkouts. You see a truck coming through here. A new round of walkouts that would start at noon today. We don't know where those facilities would be. We don't know how many workers would walk out, or we don't even know which of the big three, GM, Ford, and Chrysler owners Stellantis, these would impact. Those details last week and seem to be the case again this week, being kept under wraps until that 10 a.m. announcement is made. But people here on the picket lines once again fired up, knowing this strike could grow again within a matter of hours, guys.
So, Maggie, where do things stand on the negotiations? We understand the UAW has made a counterproposal to one of the big three, right?
That is what we've been told, according to a source familiar with these talks. Right, a source with the UAW saying that they have made a counterproposal. They haven't told us what's in that counterproposal. Stellantis is the one that it's been made to. That's the owner of Chrysler. Stellantis not commenting on that at this point. So the details of it clearly kind of shrouded in mystery as well. It's like the theme of the morning. It is some sign of progress. Of course, it confirms that talks are continuing, and we've been told that's the case with all of the big three. There's also been a report from Bloomberg putting out that the UAW may have lowered its pay demands from 40% to 30%. Again, that's according to Bloomberg, and we want to be very clear. NBC News has not been able to confirm that reporting at this time. The UAW not commenting on it, but it's just evidence, guys, that, again, these talks are continuing. There may be some ground being given on either side, but, again, this deadline is looming for potentially more walkouts to take place later on this morning.
And Maggie, are there any reasons here to be hopeful that this could resolve soon?
People out here are hopeful. I mean, think back to what happened earlier this week. We had the first sitting president coming to a picket line, President Biden coming here to the Detroit area to stand with picketers. They're hopeful that that put pressure on the big three. They're hopeful even that President Trump's spotlight, even though a lot of people out here didn't like some things that he said, but they're hopeful that pressure also, again, resonates with the big three, resonates with the automakers. And at the same time, all of the big three have been very clear that they say these talks are continuing. And a source familiar says in the last 24 to 48 hours, the talks have been really productive. productive. So again, whether it's productive enough to find common ground and kind of stall this new round of walkouts, potentially help resolve some of these issues, remains to be seen. But again, we have plenty of reason to believe that talks are continuing and hopefully progress is being made, guys.
All right, Maggie, we know you've been there for the last several days, keeping an eye on all of this. Thank you so much for your reporting.
Meanwhile, we are watching some serious rain heading into the weekend.
Let's check in with meteorologist Angie Lastman. She joins us here now. Good morning, Angie.
Good morning, guys. It's a busy day across parts of the Northeast. That's where we're seeing the increased rain chances and really some difficult conditions as far as that early morning commute on the last day of this work week. We've got 23 million people already under flood alerts. That number likely to increase as the day goes on as we continue to see this heavy rain moving through. Notice where some of the heaviest of it is into portions of New York, of course. Manhattan has been in and out of this heavy rain for the better part of the morning. We're going to see this continue into the afternoon, too. Here's how it plays out. You can see all the moisture that's kind of hanging around thanks to this coastal low. Eventually, this is going to move away, but we really don't see some major improvements until we get into the later parts of your Saturday. So we'll start to see it pull away. It takes most of the rain with it. And by the evening hours on Saturday, we'll have some big improvements, setting us up for a great Sunday in this region. But between now and Saturday afternoon, early afternoon specifically, we've got a whole lot more rain on the way. We've already seen impressive rainfall totals coming from places like Central Park early this morning. We already picked up an inch of rain. We've seen multiple inches, close to 3 inches of rain at JFK Airport. So we're likely going to see some difficulties when it comes to travel, not just on the roadways because of flooded roadways, but also the airports are going to be difficult. We could see some flooding issues in Manhattan with the subway stations and all of that. And of course, officials are working to make sure that it can go as smooth as possible. But we could see 2-3 inches of rain for widespread areas. And on top of that, some of the spots that are going to see these repeated rounds of heavy rain with rainfall rates anywhere from 2 to 3 inches, they could pick up maybe 6 to 8 inches. And some of the highest totals could be closer to 10 inches. So we really don't have a whole lot of places for all of that water to go. We've, of course, had really, a pretty saturated September when it comes to our grounds. We've seen ample amounts of rain already falling for a couple of days earlier in the week. So the flash flooding concern is very real through the day today. This will be something that we see through the afternoon and into the evening hours. So heads up for this, especially if you're going to be not just out for that early morning commute right now, but as you get into the later parts of your afternoon commute, anything that you have planned for your Friday evening in this region, places like New York, out towards Long Island. We've got parts of Connecticut and New Jersey also in that moderate risk for flash flooding. So this is going to be considerable, and we're talking, minor to moderate river flooding on top of that. So heads up for all of that. That's going to be out of the picture here by the later parts of Saturday, I mentioned, but we'll still wake up to some coastal showers for the early morning hours of your Saturday. So keep that in mind if you have early morning soccer games or things like that. We could see some cancellations. But otherwise, the middle of the country, guys, hanging on to the heat. We've got plenty of sunshine. It'll be record high temperatures across much of that area, feeling like summer. So we've got a tale of two weather stories, don't we?
Wow.
Soggy, kind of dreary autumn weather for the Northeast, and the middle of the country, summer-like. Huh?
Well, if we're here around here, we can just stay in on Saturday, maybe go out on Sunday. Not too bad.
Listen, I like the way you think.
It's optimism. I'm trying that out for a change.
About time.
That's about time, yeah. All right, Angie, thanks so much.
Of course.
Well, coming up this morning, the FDA, they are sounding the alarm on a popular drug that is being used to treat weight loss. The new warning about the unexpected side effects of meds like Ozempic as we get a closer look at just how in demand the drug really is now.
And he's already the longest living former president in U.S. history. Now, Jimmy Carter is getting ready to celebrate his 99th birthday. Stay with us. This is Morning News Now. Weight loss drugs like Ozempic and Wegovy have recently seen a massive surge in popularity and sales. But as pharmacies are seeing a spike in prescriptions written for these medications, the FDA is warning patients about new and unexpected side effects for Ozempic. NBC News correspondent Stephanie Gosk has more.
Hey there, in the last 3 months of 2022, physicians signed more than 9 million prescriptions for weight loss and diabetes drugs, including Ozempic, which is approved for diabetes, but is widely being taken off-label for weight loss. It comes as the FDA recently updated Ozempic's warning label, adding a possible new complication. For millions of Americans, the rise of weight loss and diabetes drugs, including Ozempic, feels like something of a miracle.
I couldn't be happier.
Over the past 3 years, their use has gone up 300%, according to a new report from analytics firm Trillion Health. And with the blockbuster success of these drugs comes new warnings they may not be suitable for everyone. The Food and Drug Administration recently updating its Ozempic warning label to acknowledge reports of ileus, or failure of the intestines to move normally. Drug maker Novo Nordisk, which manufactures Ozempic and Wegovy, said it stands behind the safety and efficacy of Ozempic in a statement to NBC, adding the company is working closely with the FDA to continuously monitor the safety profile of its medications. More common side effects include nausea and stomach issues, as Sharon Osbourne recently shared with Piers Morgan on Morgan Uncensored.
You feel nauseous. You don't throw up physically, but you've got that feeling. And I was about 2-3 weeks where I felt nauseous the whole time. You get very thirsty and you don't want to eat.
Osbourne says she lost more weight than she expected.
I lost 42 pounds now, and it's just enough.
Oprah Winfrey also recently weighing in on the drugs. Winfrey, who is an investor and board member in Weight Watchers, says she doesn't believe the medications are for her.
Shouldn't we all just be more accepting of whatever body you choose to be in? When I first started hearing about the weight loss drugs, I felt I've got to do this on my own. I've got to do this on my own, because if I take the drug, that's the easy way out.
Inspired by dramatic before and after pics on social media, doctors say many people have unrealistic expectations of how fast they should be losing weight, which can make unpleasant side effects worse.
I see too many people who want to start at higher doses. It is best to start slow and low.
Doctors say healthy weight loss should come from a combination of nutrition and exercise, and in most cases should be around 1 pound or 2 a week, not 5 to 10 pounds a week like you often see on social media. Back to you.
All right, Stephanie Gosk, thanks so much.
To international headlines now, starting with the conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan.
NBC News foreign correspondent Claudio Lavanga joins us now from Rome. Good morning, Claudio.
Good morning, guys. That's right. The government of Armenia said that so far about 76,000 ethnic Armenians have crossed the border, and said that about hundreds of them every single day still arrive in cars, buses and trucks laden with their belongings. That is more than half of the population of ethnic Armenians that used to live in that area up to last week when Azerbaijan took it over militarily. Now, on Thursday, ethnic Armenians said in a statement that their self-declared republic, which has existed in the contested region for the past 30 years, will cease to exist by January the 1st, putting an end to decades-long hopes for an independent state of ethnic Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh. Now to northern England, where the historic sycamore gap tree has been deliberately felled. The landmark has stood tall on Hadrian's Wall for over 200 years. Authorities have arrested a 16-year-old boy in connection with the act of vandalism as the investigation remains underway. It is one of the most photographed trees in England, was crowned English Tree of the Year in 2016, and even had its Hollywood debut in 1991 blockbuster Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. Now, Fashion Week is taking over London, Paris and Milan, but a more vintage pair of shoes is grabbing headlines. Scientists have discovered the oldest pair of shoes in Europe. The grass-woven sandals were discovered in a bat cave in Spain back in the 19th century, but a recent study using new dating techniques found that they are about 6,000 years old. They were well preserved due to the cave's low humidity and cool winds. 76 other items from that cave were also reanalyzed and found to be about 2,000 years older than previously thought. So I hope nobody uses that new dating technique on me, because you'll also find out that I'm a lot older than I look.
It's a good problem to have.
All right, Claudio, thank you so much.
Yep. All right, back here in the U.S., former President Jimmy Carter is getting ready to celebrate his 99th birthday this weekend, and it comes just days after a surprise appearance in his hometown of Plains, Georgia. NBC News Chief Washington correspondent Andrea Mitchell has those details.
As Jimmy Carter prepares to celebrate his 99th birthday this weekend, his grandson tells NBC News that President Biden has been sending his love and support, which his grandfather appreciates.
A new milestone for the longest-living former president in history. Jimmy Carter will celebrate his 99th birthday on Sunday, 1 week after making a surprise appearance with his wife Rosalind at a peanut festival in their hometown of Plains, Georgia. The Carter Center is highlighting a mosaic of the former president, with birthday wishes from celebrities including Jane Fonda and Larry David, and messages from ordinary Americans, including, "Your legacy of public service inspires me to be a public servant myself," and "History will remember you as the embodiment of what a president should be." The outing comes 7 months after the 39th president entered hospice care at his home, following a diagnosis that his cancer had returned and a series of brief hospital stays. In May, the Carter family revealed the former First Lady had been diagnosed with dementia. What matters is being home together, says their grandson, Jason.
They're coming to the end, but they're together, and this is exactly the way that you would want this last chapter to play out.
As the longest married first couple, the Carters commemorated a remarkable 75th wedding anniversary in 2021.
To my wife, Rosen, I want to express a particular gratitude for being the right woman that I chose for my wife.
It has been a really wonderful 75 years.
After losing his quest for a second term, Carter spent more than 4 decades promoting democracy and human rights in conflict-ridden countries, including North Korea, Haiti, and Cuba. Through his center, Carter pushed to fight disease around the world, while working tirelessly to build homes with Habitat for Humanity. A man of profound faith, Carter survived his first battle with brain cancer in his 90s. In 2014, reflecting on his amazing vigor.
With all your energy, what keeps you going? What is the secret, the magic of Jimmy Carter?
Well, there's no magic involved. It's adventurous, and I have to say it's gratifying and exciting for us still to do that.
One unexpected problem, the birthday festivities were planned for Sunday in Plains, but Plains is a national park. So if the government shuts down Saturday night, they couldn't be held. So the celebration has been moved up to Saturday, a day before the former president actually turns 99, just to make sure his big party is not lost to another government funding crisis. Back to you.
We are wishing him a happy birthday. Andrea, thanks so much.
Coming up, artificial intelligence posing a new challenge in classrooms across America.
We should be teaching kids how to use it as a tool and not as a shortcut.
Up next here on Morning News Now, how some teachers are working to incorporate the technology into their lesson plans the right way. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Students are back in class, and in some schools, rules are changing when it comes to the use of AI. Last year, many districts banned the use of the technology for apps like ChatGPT, but now some teachers are reconsidering that approach.
NBC News technology correspondent Jake Ward has more on this and how to make sure your student isn't over-relying on that AI. Jake, good morning to you.
Good morning, you guys. You know, last year, schools were really taken by surprise when it came to ChatGPT. And now, as teachers and students become more familiar with these programs that can write an essay in seconds, more schools are being forced to consider recent AI bans. And in some cases, they are even embracing these new digital aids.
AI is the new reality in classrooms across the country.
So how many of you use the AI like ChatGPT or Bard in this discussion? How many of you pulled it up? All right.
As more students turn to tools like ChatGPT or Google's Bard to generate explanations or whole essays in seconds. A new survey found nearly half of teens say they will likely use AI to do their schoolwork this year, even though more than half in the same survey say they consider it cheating.
I know plenty of people like that, actually.
High school senior Zachary Clifton says since ChatGPT's release last November, it's become normal at schools like his.
I think that the learning loss that was brought on by the pandemic, it caused an influx of students who felt compelled to cheat.
He says he uses the tech only to create study guides, but says it's no secret AI can easily be misused.
I think whether or not ChatGPT will enhance or impair a student's education is ultimately their choice.
Schools are struggling to set the rules. The nation's two largest districts banned the use of generative AI tools last school year, but school officials in New York and Los Angeles are now openly wondering about exploring AI's potential benefits. At Mountain View High School in Silicon Valley, there is no formal guidance on AI, at least not yet.
So that would be a categorical grant.
But this year, Ms. Hancock tweaked the rules for her class.
I think for us to fight it is a losing battle. We should be teaching kids how to use it as a tool and not as a shortcut.
She now allows students to use programs like ChatGPT as directed and only on some assignments.
I think it's different to use ChatGPT to research a question in Gov versus to use it in English to write a paragraph.
Ms. Hancock says she may even consider changing how she evaluates her students.
I think that the way we assess student knowledge is going to increasingly be in this format. It's going to be conversation and discussion, maybe formal debates of some kind. But it's
Tell me about what you know here and now.
Right.
Don't write it down. Don't email it to me.
You'll have a chance to prep it and write it, but I'm going to ask you to speak it because that lessens the chance of them using the AI as wholesale for their knowledge.
Is it logistically feasible for you to have a sit-down conversation with every one of your students and assess them that way?
No. So we have to figure that part out as well.
So for now, students are left to navigate how they will implement AI in their own education. And in the end, AI may force us all to reconsider how school works entirely.
I see 150 kids sometimes a day. And so how do I ensure all 150 have access to the material? This is a tool that can help us do that. Am I creating problems? Probably. Will things be lost? Probably. But maybe it's okay that they're lost because new things will be found.
You know, like any new technology, this one is raising big philosophical questions. And in this case, about the purpose of education, right? I mean, educators are talking to me about, what is being taught for? Is it about becoming a more enriched citizen, in which case we could use ChatGPT as just a sort of learning aid? Or is it just transactional? You're just trying to get ahead as fast as you possibly can, which was kind of the lesson of the pandemic, in which case ChatGPT, of course, people are going to try and cheat with it. So important here, I think, to be having a conversation with our students about what do you want out of school, and is this going to give it to you?
Eye-opening stuff. Jake Ward, thanks so much.
Major retailers across the country say they are struggling to deal with shoplifting. This week, the National Retail Federation issued a new report saying that retail crime accounted for over $112 billion in industry losses. And now, as a result, some stores are attempting to fight back with the use of artificial intelligence. NBC's Chris Camara shows us how it works.
You've probably seen the viral videos stealing the headlines.
In front of everybody in plain daylight.
Organized retail thefts are a new challenge, but daily, a long-standing problem eats into store profits too.
It's the everyday small shoplifter, the people that are taking $2, $3, $4, $5 at a time and coming in all the time.
Benny Tiapan is an independent grocer in Petaluma. His team is catching lots of shoplifters.
At least one shoplifter every day.
But he says far more go undetected. So now he's adding a new layer of artificial intelligence to his store's security cameras. All 36 feed into an AI system developed by a French tech company called Vision. It analyzes the video feeds for telltale movements that suggest someone is stealing.
Placing items in a backpack, a purse, in the trousers, in a jacket, consuming the product.
Vision co-founder Benoit Koenig invited me to try it. Playing the thief. I walked down the wine aisle and slipped a bottle in my backpack.
All right, I stole it. How quickly will you get the alert? Yeah, I just have to wait a few seconds.
Less than a minute later,
got it.
A very suspicious activity alert popped up on a manager's phone with a video clip of me. Without AI, my crime might have gone undetected.
The algorithm doesn't care about what people look like. It's just recognizing a gesture.
Vision says it signed up 300 mostly independent U.S. stores for its new AI. That's a tiny slice of U.S. retailers. But it's not the only one on the job.
Happy Wednesday from the WUFT newsroom.
To see what else is on the horizon, we traveled 2,500 miles east to the University of Florida, home of the Loss Prevention Research Council.
We've got between 230, 250, depending on who you ask, technologies in here.
Director Reed Hayes is a criminologist.
We have a visible camera here.
This mock store, complete with shelves and checkouts, is a one-of-a-kind laboratory.
This is the only place in the world like it.
Scientists here are working with 110 tech companies and 88 retailers to cut stores' losses.
There's AI in here that can pick up if you're not actually scanning an item at self-checkout.
The tech here, like this tiny concealed exit camera, is focused on identifying and stopping shoplifters, one-off thieves and smash and grab crews alike. The lab's crawling with cameras.
You'll see that we've got 8 of them.
And often, retail executives.
They want to brainstorm with us, but they want to spend time in these labs.
When they meet with you, how many of those stores tell you shoplifting is flat or down?
None of them have told us that shoplifting or theft or losses are down or flat.
A National Retail Federation security survey found 52% of stores are increasing budgets for security equipment.
We're talking about tens of millions more nationally.
Back in Petaluma,
So we're in the back office.
Vision told us a small AI system like Benny's costs just a couple $100s a month.
A fraction of what a security guard would cost.
Benny says during the first few weeks, his system's already flagged several people for pocketing an item, and his team has approached them.
Typically say, I'm sorry, and give it back. That's all we want. Please don't do it again.
Deterrence would be a big win for Benny, and maybe for shoppers.
I hope that for the shoppers, eventually it means groceries will cost a little less if we can stop shoplifting.
Artificial intelligence in stores, possibly bringing real savings home to you. Chris Kimura for NBC News, Petaluma, California.
Well, coming up this morning, an ode to the red envelope. Today, Netflix is ending its once iconic DVD by mail service.
When we come back, the company's co-founder will join us to talk about how Netflix has grown into the streaming giant it is today. Stay with us. You're watching Morning News Now.
Welcome back. Financial headlines this morning. Business travel and tourism coming back, but Boeing CEO says he's more optimistic than ever now.
CNBC Silvana Henao joins us now. Good morning, Silvana.
Valerie, Stephen, good morning to you. So, Boeing CEO says he's optimistic about the recovery in travel demand, and it's more resilient than he expected. Dave Calhoun tells CNBC there's still a lot of pent-up demand for just passenger traffic and tourism, and business travel is coming back. He says Boeing's order books to meet that demand are as robust as he's ever seen in his career. United Airlines will give conditional job offers to active duty military pilots to join the airline as a first officer once they complete their service. The plan comes as U.S. airlines have been struggling to recruit enough trained pilots and crew members as they aim to capitalize on the post-pandemic surge in international travel. United hired more than 4,000 new pilots in the past 2 years and expects to add more than 10,000 this decade. There are apps for just about everything, including where and how much you exercise while on vacation. One fitness app, Strava, shows travelers tend to work out when they visit smaller cities in Europe, such as in Croatia, Spain, and Portugal. They're all a draw for outdoor enthusiasts who enjoy hiking or skiing. On the flip side, Strava says people are less active in parts of the Caribbean and Central America, such as Trinidad and Tobago and the Dominican Republic.
Did not know that. Very cool. Silvana.
Very cool, yeah.
Yeah.
Silvana, thank you so much.
Got it.
Well, this morning we bid farewell to Netflix DVD by mail service. Hard to believe, after 25 years since that first shipment, Netflix will send out its last little red envelope. It's a nostalgic milestone for the company that's been disrupting movie watching for a generation now. NBC News correspondent Noah Pransky has that story.
Dearly beloved, we gather today to pay tribute to the red envelope that changed the world. At just 25 years young, the Netflix DVD service is going dark, leaving behind a legacy of innovation that truly shaped a generation.
Remember when we used to get those in the mail, the red envelope DVDs? There's something special about getting a package in the mail.
In an era where Netflix is known as the world's dominant streaming service, with more than 238 million subscribers, you'd be forgiven if you didn't realize the company was still shipping out DVDs. Flashback to the 90s, where watching a movie at home usually required a trip to your local Blockbuster. But then in 1998, Netflix blew up that business model by providing movies on demand through the U.S. Postal Service.
This is a DVD service. So you get, for $20 a month, you get 3 DVDs. So you can have them come into your house and you can get some great family movies.
In 2000, Netflix launched the first algorithm to recommend movies based on previous selections. A year later, it reached 1 million subscribers. And in 2007, as it was reaching its 1 billionth disc shipped, Netflix introduced another innovation.
DVD rental giant Netflix today is launching a new service that lets subscribers watch movies on their computers.
A streaming giant was born. Blockbuster goes out of business. And then another major market disruption as Netflix expands into content creation with hit shows like Orange is the New Black and House of Cards.
I binge watched until 2 a.m.
A child of the dot-com era was now going toe-to-toe with the granddaddies of both movies and television, but all the while still sending those DVDs to the homes of millions of Americans.
I didn't even know that was still a thing.
It's still a thing. Until this week.
It's just weird thinking about how it's something you'll tell your kids and your grandkids about, and they'll think you're just a dinosaur.
As a thank you to loyal subscribers, Netflix offered a final shipment of up to 10 free DVDs for customers to keep. A bitter week for some, sweet for others.
That is amazing. I worked for Blockbuster as a store manager back in the day.
Why are you so happy about the end of the DVD?
Because they put Blockbuster and me out of business.
The red DVD envelope is survived by streaming giant Netflix and millions of empty mailboxes across the United States.
And our thanks to Noah Pransky for that report. And we're looking back on the end of that era in entertainment. So we are joined by Mark Randolph. He's the co-founder of Netflix and its first CEO. Mark, the story of Netflix's meteoric rise is legendary now. But how did you come up with that original idea of shipping DVDs? And did people believe it would be a huge success?
Well, you know, it's true. For those first 9 years, if you wanted a movie from Netflix, we mailed it to you. And it was really because Reed Hastings and I thought there had to be a better way. I mean, you might remember to get a movie back then, you had to go to a store, get a recommendation from a surly clerk, go to the new release aisle. And we said there's got to be a better way to do this. And for us, it was mailing movies to people. And it all came from test mailing a used music CD, which got to Reed's house in a day. And we kind of said this thing might just work.
Mark, Netflix shipped its first DVD, which was Beetlejuice in '98. How did it feel to see this era for the company come to a close?
You know, obviously, I'm a little nostalgic, but I think it's kind of this real 25-year run is really this validation that we have changed people's engagement with entertainment. I mean, I think Netflix is probably the world's largest repository of movies. It's the biggest library that's ever been and probably will ever be now that we go to the streaming era.
Actually, I'm sorry, Mark, we're actually having to break in here. We're following some breaking news right now that we have to get to. It's coming out of Washington, and we're going to head over to an NBC News special report right now on that breaking news.
This is an NBC News special report. Here's Savannah Guthrie.
Good morning. We come on the air with breaking news. Senator Dianne Feinstein, the longest-serving female senator in U.S. history, has passed away. She was 90 years old. Two sources familiar with the matter confirming that this morning. Dianne Feinstein, first elected in 1992, representing the state of California for more than 30 years. She faced persistent health problems in recent years, leaving quite a legacy as well. NBC's Andrea Mitchell with a look back at her life.
Dianne Feinstein, a leading woman senator for generations, whose political career in California was launched by tragedy. November 1978, San Francisco Mayor George Moscone and Board of Supervisors member Harvey Milk were assassinated in City Hall. Then Board of Supervisors President Dianne Feinstein tried desperately to save Milk's life.
Both Mayor Moscone and Supervisor Harvey Milk have been shot and killed.
The event cementing her passion for gun reform. She was elected mayor and became a national figure on Democratic nominee Walter Mondale's shortlist for running mate before he chose Geraldine Ferraro.
I've had an opportunity now to be the first woman and the first mayor to be asked to go through an interview process. And I view that as a major opening of a door and something that's very important to do.
It was the Clarence Thomas hearings before an all-male Senate Judiciary Committee in 1991 that got Feinstein to the Senate, as she recalled in 2018.
And what did I see but an all-male Senate Judiciary Committee grilling Anita Hill? And it was not nice, and it was not what one would like to see. And that was my incentive to run in 1992.
After her decisive Senate win, then-Senator Joe Biden made her the first woman on the Judiciary Committee. In Congress, she quickly made an impact, leading the charge for an assault weapons ban in 1994. As Senate Intelligence Chair, she took on the CIA's waterboarding of prisoners, holding hearings into the Bush administration's harsh interrogation techniques. But in later years, colleagues faulted her performance during Supreme Court confirmations, praising Republican Lindsey Graham for getting Trump nominee Amy Coney Barrett confirmed just weeks before the 2020 election.
This has been one of the best set of hearings that I've participated in.
But through political and personal trials, Dianne Feinstein's legacy as a trailblazer endures.
And Andrea joins us now. Andrea, I know, of course, you've known Senator Feinstein for many, many years. Before we talk a little about her legacy, she clearly had been struggling with health problems. She was 90 years old. What do we know about her passing?
Well, we do know that it happened overnight. Her closest friend in Congress, Nancy Pelosi, was at a celebration for another very well-known Washington figure, a 90-year-old woman, at Cafe Milano until, into the evening last night. It was quite celebratory. A lot of elderly Washington people, Washington icons were there. Linda Bird Johnson, Lucy Baines Johnson, people from Texas who are friends of the celebrant. And Dianne Feinstein would have been invited to that. She was not there. I was supposed to have lunch with her 10 days ago. And as she has frequently done in recent months, at the last moment, she didn't feel well enough to come. So the people who were there, it was a very small group of people who've known her for a long time, were waiting on her, but she didn't come. But she has since been in the Senate. I'm not sure whether she voted and was in the Senate yesterday, in fact. That's something, we can obviously check. But Savannah, she's really been failing. And we just want to point out the legacy. In 1992, she was elected in the so-called Year of the Woman, and she really almost single-handedly pushed through that assault weapons ban.
Yeah,
Savannah?
after that searing experience witnessing the assassination of two of her colleagues in San Francisco. There's a lot to unpack with that legacy. We will continue to cover the story more on NBC News Now, MSNBC throughout the morning here on Today. I'm Savannah Guthrie in New York. This has been a special report.
Some breaking news this morning. We have sad news to share. Senator Dianne Feinstein of California is dead.
Yeah, we continue to follow that breaking news that actually happened overnight. Two sources familiar with the matter confirming that Feinstein has died. A six-term senator with a distinguished career in politics. She was a trailblazer in many senses of the word. She had been suffering from several complications after being hospitalized with shingles back in February. In many recent appearances on Capitol Hill, she was seen wheelchair-bound, and she did appear frail, and that raised a lot of questions about if she would be able to finish that term. Then, back in February, she announced that she did plan to retire at the end of her term, which would come in January of 2025. She was 90 years old, the longest-serving female senator. And we're joining now NBC News presidential historian Michael Beschloss for more on this. Just an incredible career she had. She broke through many glass ceilings. Michael, what more were your impressions about hearing this news?
Well, sad. I knew her quite well, and this was not a sharp surprise, but this is the end of a big career in American history. Not just recent years, her serving as a senator, but this is someone who, for many years, was, just as you were saying, Steve, a pathbreaker. She was mayor of San Francisco. She was a long-serving senator from California. And I think what is little known, I think it can now be said now that she has passed, she was almost the first vice presidential candidate of a major party in American history. In 1984, when Walter Mondale was thinking about who he should choose as his vice president as he locked up the nomination, he decided that it should be a woman for all sorts of reasons. It was time. It was a way of showing that he could exercise bold leadership. And it came down to two figures, Congresswoman Geraldine Ferraro, then Mayor Dianne Feinstein of San Francisco. And I know from people, both Mondale and people close to him, and also from talking to Senator Feinstein, it was almost her. So that's just one other way where this would have been different. George Moscone, the previous mayor from San Francisco was assassinated by a man who also shot the now famous and iconic Harvey Milk. I heard Dianne Feinstein more than once describe the experience of walking into a room and seeing Mayor Moscone after he had been fatally attacked. This is someone who's been an enormous, important senator, not only as, an important trailblazer for women in the Senate, but widening the lens. This is someone who, since the 1970s, has been a major political figure in American life.
And that is to say the least. We're seeing tributes already pouring in from all over on this. Michael Beschloss knew the senator and has followed her through her historic career that we'll be talking about. This pathbreaker, this trailblazer, Dianne Feinstein, dead at the age of 90. Thank you so much for those insights. We'll have more to come on this. In the meantime, that's going to do it for this hour of Morning News Now.
Morning News Now continues. Stay with us.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.